Welcome to this camera comparison between the best to-date camera smartphone, the Vivo X100 Pro versus the Underdog, the Nubia Z60 Ultra. So let's get started. Here you can see the cameras and their specs. The Vivo has a triple 50 megapixel setup with a 1-inch type sensor, where the Nubia has this 1.49-inch type sensor IMX800 with a 35mm lens, which is I think pretty spectacular, and it has an ultra wide angle with 50 megapixels and then a 64 megapixel tele zoom with 85mm, which is like 2 point something from the 35mm, and it is 5 point or 4 point something when you don't calculate it in, which is pretty if you don't calculate it in like the 35mm. I mean, if you calculate 24-ish millimeters, then it will be 4 point something. Very comparable to the Vivo X100 Pro, I think. So I think we should take a look at this as well. Then we have prominently only one camera in the front that you can see. The other one is an under-display front-facing camera, 12 megapixels only on the Nubia. Quite of a downgrade to the Chinese model that has 16 megapixels still, but maybe it's a better sensor. And we have 32 megapixels on the Vivo X100 Pro, and I think we start off with front-facing videos. First big bummer on the Vivo X100 Pro is that we only have 1080p 30 frames per second on this one, on this 32 megapixel shooter on the front. Nevertheless, it is pretty good full HD video that you get out of it. So I hope that at one point with the Pro Plus or Ultra model, maybe they will even allow us to use 4K and put a sensor in that can do 4K as well. What do you think, nevertheless, of this 1080p 30 frames per second front-facing video on the Vivo X100 Pro? The under-display camera of the Nubia Z60 Ultra also only features 1080p, and I think it's pretty comparable, maybe a little bit over-sharpened. At least it looks on the screen like a little bit over-sharpened. But as soon as I start moving, you see there's no stabilization. For some reason, they're also omitting stabilizations, making this camera basically useless, maybe just for selfies really in pinch. Otherwise you will see that it's a bit of softish, sometimes have some kind of glooming effect. This is simply because it has this display in front of it. This is why it has to fight and do computational photography, computational things to get this video straight. So what do you think about this front-facing video? HDR I think is okay on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. Let's come to the highlight of the Vivo X100 Pro, the 1-inch type sensor. You get a nice background blur, you get good stabilization, good colors, good everything basically what you have here with the Vivo X100 Pro. 4K 30, but you can also record 4K 60 frames per second, and I think even 8K is possible here, 30 frames per second on the main camera. And the cool thing is 4K 30, I have the possibility to switch between all lenses, so I can just press one button and I'm at the 50mm ultra wide angle. That is also 50 megapixels and also pretty good, I would say. Pretty large sensor here that can also cover I think a lot, but it is a little bit smaller than the one on the Nubia. And here, by the way, autofocus test. I think it has some close focusing distance options as well for macro photography, which is quite nice, and also for close-ups as well. So what do you think about this ultra wide angle? Then we wanted to also check out the zoom. So let's try to zoom there on the background. So let's go to 2 times zoom, and I can go to 4.3 times zoom, and then I can zoom in up to 10 times. So what do you think about this one here on the Vivo X100 Pro? Now recording on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, and this uses by default the ultra wide angle. So we have this 18mm ultra wide angle here simply because the 35mm would be a little bit too cropped in. Nevertheless, we have a very large sensor, 1/1.55 inch sized sensor. So it's basically like a 24mm 1/5 inch sized sensor here, just with it's just 18mm in this case, and it's perfect for vlogging. I think it's not as wide as the wide angle on the Vivo X100 Pro, but still okay. Sadly, 4K 30 frames per second, 4K 60, even 4K 120 frames per second are possible on the ultra wide angle, but not the switching between lenses, no matter which frame rate you're using, which is like a huge bummer. Even in 1080p you cannot switch between the lenses, which is like, I'm not sure why they are doing this, why they cannot like fix this. Hopefully somehow in firmware to be able to switch between lenses. It would be pretty cool. So I have to stop recording now and we switch to the 35mm. So this is now the 35mm. You can see it's quite cropped down, especially if you have stabilization active, then it's cropping even more. So it's basically unusable for vlogging as it's too close up. But what do you think nevertheless of the quality here of the 35mm for video and 4K 30 frames per second? And now I'm recording with the 85mm, which is 2.4 times zoom actually. And we can start zooming in. So this is 4 times, this is 5 times, this is 6, 7, 8, 9, and we can go up to 15 times, which I think still looks okay. What do you think? How does it compare? It's getting a bit closer than the Vivo X100 Pro. How does it compare against the Vivo X100 Pro? What do you think? Front-facing video comparison, do I have to say anything here? Just look at the pictures, just stills from the first, I think, frame here. Yeah, this looks like very good for Full HD 1080p on the Vivo X100 Pro, and this on the Nubia Z60 Ultra looks like from a 10 or 15-year-old camera, digital camera. Actually, it's very, very bad on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, so definitely a win on the Vivo X100 Pro. Main camera footage comparison, I'm calling it main camera because the Nubia Z60 Ultra's 35mm is not the main camera for video. Nevertheless, here I'm comparing the 1-inch type sensor versus the 1/1.49 and 35mm type sensors. This is why it's even cropping for stabilization. Both are cropping for stabilization. Look at the bokeh here in the background. Look at my face. Now compared with the Z60 Ultra, I think it's doing quite a fine job. Sharpness is definitely there. The colors I like. Even the bokeh is very comparable to the 1-inch type sensor, maybe even a bit better there. And also what I really like is the stabilization on the 35mm. Usually you think it would be bad, but no, it is pretty good. So I could imagine, I'm not doing it here, but I could imagine this being very, very comparable to the 1-inch type sensor in terms of video, and especially the colors. You get yellow punchy colors, and here it has more realistic colors. So I like also the color science on the Nubia Z60 Ultra there a lot. So I think in video with the main camera sensor it's pretty comparable, even though 24mm is better on the X100 Pro for vlogging for sure. You have to use a selfie stick or something like this on the Nubia Z60 Ultra for this, but at least focusing is on par. This was not always the case looking at X140 Ultra. So what do you think about this one here? And now let's compare the main camera for video on the X100 Pro, the 24mm 1-inch type sensor, against the ultra wide angle on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. That is the default used for video. You can see that we maintain the pretty good colors of the main camera sensor that we have, 35mm as well. And it's also doing fine. It's wider for sure than on the X100 Pro. Of course, the X100 Pro wins in terms of bokeh, but there's also a little bit of bokeh on the Nubia, and it's pretty good that it doesn't lose me in terms of focus. So it's not focus hunting so much as the previous generations did with the ultra wide angle. So I think they're doing a pretty fine job. And for vlogging, I like the Nubia Z60 Ultra even better than the Vivo X100 Pro, because a bit further away you see a little bit more, but you still have a good camera sensor. It reminds me a little bit of the Mate 40 Pro, P40 Pro and P40 Pro Plus that have this cine lens that had also high megapixels, large sensor, kind of also I think 18mm kind of sensor. So it is pretty much on par there with this one. And when we just go to the real ultra wide angle there on the Vivo X100 Pro, of course it has to switch lenses. Here you can see the big difference. First of all, too much contrast. a bit too much shadowy on my face. It reminds me a little bit on the 35mm on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. There were also a little bit more shadows there, but this is a bit weird here. And when you take a look at the colors and color science and so on, you can see that first of all, I seem to be a little bit slightly out of focus there. Yeah, I think the brick wall is in focus. I'm not in focus. Colors there, okay on the Vivo, and here, yeah, I think you can see a little bit of stabilization. Sometimes it's losing the focus and going back to the brick wall there, but most of the time, like 99% is like really focusing on my face. So yeah, it's definitely a bit better. HDR, do you see overexposure here? We see overexposure here, slightly different angle, but also overexposure here. Green grass, there's a bit soft there for sure. The grass here looks a bit different. Let's walk a little bit further to see if you can see there the green grass as well. So it's a bit brighter here, it's a bit darker here, more punchier here. I think I prefer in this case the Nubia Z60 Ultra still, even though I think that the HDR is better on the X100 Pro, as you can see here, without so much overexposure. And here we have a lot of overexposure on the Z60 Ultra, but you can be the judge here, especially if you look at my face and the colors there and compare it with the Nubia. I think the Nubia is doing a better job there in terms of ultra wide angle. What do you think? Now to the zoom camera shots. Usually you would think the Vivo X100 Pro is better. It should be, on paper at least, it's better. This is 10 times zoom on the Vivo X100 Pro versus 10 times zoom. Nah, it's not actually 10 times, it's 7.7 times zoom, I think, on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, because 10 times there, because you're going from the 35mm is 350mm instead of only 230 millimeters like on the Vivo X100 Pro. So it looks sharper on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. Very interesting. So the X100 Pro here, this is what you get, 10 times zoom. And this is the Nubia Z60 Ultra. Yes, it is over sharpening, but you can see it here on the text here. But it seems to be a bit clearer for me. It's a bit more contrasty for sure. Has nice HDR. I like the colors here of the clouds a little bit better, which is like a bit dull here on the Vivo. So it's doing a better job for me, for my taste. And the Z60 Ultra can go even further, as you can see here, up to 15 times zoom. It reached out 10 and now it's going to 15 times zoom, which is now the case. And yeah, this is the maximum here on the Vivo. This is the maximum that you can get on the Nubia. Yes, the Nubia is falling apart a little bit at 15 times zoom, but at 10 times versus 7.7 times, which is roughly the same millimeters that you have on the Vivo X100 Pro, it's definitely competing against the Vivo X100 Pro in terms of video, and you can zoom it even further and it still looks okay. Let's go to the so this is 7.7 times, and there it reached 10 times zoom now on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, and let's compare it. It's very comparable there with the Vivo X100 Pro there in terms of detail level, but yeah, like I said, at 7.7 times, roughly the same millimeters like the Vivo X100 Pro, it looks better on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, which is quite interesting. So a further reach in zoom, and yeah, it's clearer at the equivalent of 10 times to the Vivo X100 Pro, which is quite surprising in my opinion. What do you think about this result? Let's take a look at the photos. On the left always the Vivo X100 Pro, on the right always the Nubia Z60 Ultra. We start off with the main camera sensors. 1-inch type sensor, 24mm on the X100 Pro. The Nubia Z60 Ultra, 35mm 1/1.49-inch type sensor. In terms of colors, what we can see here is more punchy colors on the Vivo X100 Pro, more contrasty kind of look on the X100 Pro. Look at the background there. And talking about background blur, you get better background blur with the Nubia Z60 Ultra because of 35mm and very large sensors. So the claim that a 35mm can produce a little bit more bokeh is true in this situation at least. And you can also see that I'm much closer with the 35mm here on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. We have also different in terms of aperture. We have f1.8 on the Vivo X100 Pro, where we have f1.6, maybe even f1.59 on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. When it comes to detail levels there, both have a slight mismatch there in terms of focusing, but they were focusing down there below. And I think very comparable in terms of sharpness. It's a bit of noise maybe creeping in on the Nubia Z60 Ultra already. It's a bit brighter here all over the place, which perceives like a little bit more detail there, but it's not really there. Now let's take a look at the ultra wide angle. Actually on the Nubia Z60 Ultra is 80 millimeters, so it's not so ultra wide, more like of a standard kind of wide angle there that you can see. And on the Vivo X100 Pro we have 50 millimeters, which I would classify as ultra wide angle already. Color difference, much bluer sky colors here, and the clouds look a much bluer. They're more realistic on the X100 Pro for sure, because it was like, yeah, rainy clouds, so they should look a bit gray and not so much bluish there. Otherwise, all over the frame you will see that the Nubia Z60 Ultra is a bit cooler and the Vivo X100 Pro a bit warmer. In terms of detail level, you can see much more details on the Z60 Ultra. This is not only because of 18 millimeters, but also larger sensor that we have here. Very large sensor, and the X100 Pro cannot compete there with this one. And you can also see it here in terms of detail levels. It's a bit over sharpened on the Z60 Ultra, but still, I think also towards the sides here, it's pretty sharp, maintains its sharpness all over the place, where the Vivo X100 Pro is getting pretty soft there. It's wider, however, you can clearly see it here with this one chimney that you can see here, and this is here like at the construction site that you don't see here on the AXA tower, I think it is. And otherwise a bit darker here, maybe on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, but again you can see the sharpness detail difference there. It's a little bit sharper on the Z60 Ultra. So ultra wide angle I would definitely give here for the Nubia Z60 Ultra. Colors are pretty similar here in terms of the green grass. I think maybe a bit brighter, again more contrasty look on the X100 Pro in general. 10 times versus 10 times, this is 230, this is 350 millimeters. Yeah, you get a bit closer with the Nubia Z60 Ultra, which is quite interesting there. And also in terms of detail level, it looks pretty similar. If you zoom in 100%, you can see, yeah, the modern art kind of contest there. But the Nubia is losing against the Vivo X100 Pro's processing, which is like smoothing things out and looks a bit cleaner there. But in terms of detail level, I think they are pretty comparable. It's just that the Z60 Ultra has like a worse algorithm that is not smoothing things out so much as the Vivo X100 Pro is doing. When it comes to this shot, this is 35 versus 35. This is 35 native on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, and this is 35 cropped in from the One X 23 millimeter. Because if you press on the One X again, it will switch to 28, and then the next one is 35 millimeter. So let's compare it. Again, the color difference, much bluer sky here, much cooler colors there, much warmer colors here, more realistic colors on the Vivo. And more contrasty look on the Vivo as well. Let's take a look at the back there and let's compare. Very, very comparable. Here I think the Nubia is overdoing it maybe a little bit with the yellow casting there, but it's not so wide as on the Vivo X100 Pro, so the white balance here is a bit off. Otherwise, in terms of detail level, very comparable. Not much of a difference to see here, actually, which is quite interesting. I have to say the clouds here on the Nubia look a little bit more tasty than the white ones that I see here on the Vivo X100 Pro. In terms of details, you can see there may be slightly better details on the X100 Pro. It's a bit brighter as well, whereas this is a bit darker there. And when we go to the edge here as well, I think pretty good. The Vivo X100 Pro has a good algorithm there for this for sure. And when you compare the tree here in the foreground, there it becomes evident that, especially the foreground objects, it becomes evident also here the bushes or the rests of the bushes there. It becomes evident that this is like a little bit cropped in, and the algorithms try to optimize this, where the Nubia Z60 Ultra looks pretty smooth and is better in this regards there at 35 millimeter for sure. Another zoom test. This is now the 100 millimeters versus the 85 millimeters on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, the native kind of zoom. We can see also the color difference here, a bit more punchy colors on the Vivo X100 Pro. Actually, the Nubia Z60 Ultra color is more realistic because this is the real color that you have on this sign, and this is a little bit too punchy, too bright kind of color. Very comparable, I have to say. It's not really a huge difference because they're using, it's the same sensor that they're using here, it's just a different glass that they're using there. And this allows the Vivo X100 Pro to zoom in a little bit more there. And it's cropping in probably as well from the 64 to the 50 megapixels there. This is why we have a pretty similar result. There's a bit of optimization going on, and the Vivo X100 Pro is doing this a little bit better. You can see a little bit of their effect here around the corner, around the round signs here. yeah, around the round signs exactly. And it's a bit softer here on the Vivo X100 Pro. Chromatic aberrations is getting also there, and it's like trying to compensate a little bit, but yeah, overall very comparable here, I would say. If I zoom in a little bit more, where I can like almost compare them, because this is like 142 millimeters, is 242, 233. So I try to match it roughly with the Vivo X100 Pro. You can see again, pretty comparable. If you don't zoom in, you won't notice any difference. And here you can see, yes, the optimization on the X100 Pro together with the optics is working a little bit better. So yes, this looks a bit better than on the Z60 Ultra, as you can see here, where we have a little bit of like over sharpening artifacts already creeping in. Now let's compare this one. Very interesting, because here the Nubia is using its ultra wide angle, but the ultra wide angle has also a double function. If I press on it again, it will give me 24 millimeters, which is roughly the same that usually those camera smartphones have. In this case, the Vivo has 23 millimeters, so one less. It's a little bit wider, as you can see here. The trash bin is visible where here it's not. Let's compare it. Very comparable. I'm surprised. Yes, again, Vivo X100 Pro, more contrasty look. You can see it here in the shadows. But on first glance, not much of a difference. Let's take a look at the details there. Now let's go first into the background there and compare the backgrounds. And there you can see there's a big difference. Yes, of course, there you can see that the Nubia Z60 Ultra is cropping in from an 18 millimeter. And this is a bigger difference than you saw with the 24 millimeter of the Vivo X100 cropping into the 35 millimeter. So yes, the Nubia also has like algorithms that need a little bit more optimization, but also, yeah, the sensor itself is not meant to crop in so much. However, I think for this kind of what it is doing an okayish kind of job. Foreground, you can see it's a little bit less sharp than on the Vivo X100 Pro. Towards the sides also, colors is pretty similar, a lot sharper there. This is a little bit like softer there for sure. So yes, 24 millimeters is a win, definitely native zoom Vivo X100 Pro. The cropping of the Z60 Ultra needs a little bit more optimization, I think. Ultra wide angle versus ultra wide angle, yes, on the Vivo X100 Pro, really ultra wide angle. On the Z60 Ultra, it's also a wide angle, but let's take a look again. We see the same kind of more contrasty kind of look on the Vivo X100 Pro. When we go towards the edges, you can see a little bit more noise on the Z60 Ultra, but more sharpness. It's not getting so soft towards the sides there as the Vivo X100 Pro. Look at the tower itself. You can see much more details on the Z60 Ultra, which is quite interesting there. And yeah, overall, I think both doing a fine job there. But the winner for the ultra wide angle is definitely the Z60 Ultra, just because of the detail level that you get there. Here, look at the pavement, and look at here. It's just night and day difference there. The Z60 Ultra has a very good ultra wide angle. Portrait shots, very interesting as well here. This is 35 millimeter because, yeah, the Nubia Z60 Ultra has this 35 millimeter option there. And I didn't even use portrait mode here, I just used the normal mode, and it's doing a very nice shot on the Z60 Ultra. Compared with the Vivo X100 Pro, where I used portrait mode because, yeah, it's the way where you can have also nice background blur. Compare them with each other. It's sharper on the Z60 Ultra for sure, because it's a native one, and it's basically the same that we had with the 24 versus 35 millimeter, where the 24 was cropped to 35 millimeter also for this kind of shot with portrait. Both look nice, I would say, and I would give the win to the Z60 Ultra for this portrait there for sure, also because it seems to be like some blurry issue there as well with the Vivo X100 Pro. Some parts being not so much out of focus as I would guess, especially here, for example, which like doesn't look so uniformly. And then we come to the native zooms. The Vivo X100 Pro, actually no, this is the Vivo X100 Pro with 85 millimeter, to compare it against the 88 millimeter here. Actually, it should be 85 millimeter on the Nubia. Pretty comparable, I would say. It's a bit more yellowish, my face here on the X100 Pro, where the Nubia Z60 Ultra keeps it more real. And yeah, eye color, both. I think the Vivo gets it a bit more right. It's a bit too darkish on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. That raises the contrast a little bit, but the skin color much better on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, much more realistic as well. And yeah, detail levels for sure. This is a win for the Nubia. Let's compare it with the 100mm on the Vivo X100 Pro, which is a native zoom there. And even there, I think the Nubia Z60 Ultra, you can see, because we have like, this is very interesting here, this is like 12 megapixels, this is 16 megapixels on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, because we have 64 megapixels that is cropping for. So you get the same kind of field of view, even though this is 100mm, this is 88mm. When I zoom into 100%, you get basically the same kind of zoom level. And here I like the Nubia Z60 Ultra better. Look at the eye. And not only the skin color that looks more realistic on the Nubia, but the eye is sharp. And you can see all the little details on the eye, in the eye. Here you can see also maybe the little details on the eye, in the eye, but it's not sharp. It is slightly out of focus. I'm not sure where it was focusing. The same goes for the other eye. Nice and sharp on the Nubia, and slightly out of focus there on the Vivo X100 Pro. So yes, to everyone who's saying the Vivo X100 Pro is the best portrait shot camera, no, it is not. By far, it's not the first smartphone that is beating the Vivo X100 Pro in terms of portraits, and the Nubia Z60 Ultra is doing a splendid job here when it comes to this. Let's talk about ultra wide angle and macro shots. Some people were complaining, where are the macro shots? Macros, which one would you prefer? I would tend towards the X100 Pro because of a more contrasty look there, but I can get a bit closer with the Nubia Z60 Ultra, which is quite interesting there. Let's take a look at the detail level here. Tessar T-Star coating. This is the one that the Vivo X100 Pro also has. Very comparable. I think the colors are a bit more right because it is orangey, and here it's a bit more yellowish on the Z60 Ultra, so that's a bit weird. I get a little bit closer there, but yeah, it's a bit soft there, it's a bit soft there. It's maybe a tiny bit softer on the Nubia Z60 Ultra there, but it's very comparable there. Also towards the top, both get a little bit softer there, and very comparable. And then we have also the Vivo X100 Pro with close focusing distance of the tele camera that can also do such things and gets things a bit sharper. And the Nubia Z60 Ultra has to struggle, and I have to take a few steps back to get this shot with the tele lens. Actually, I'm not even sure if it's a tele lens because it's quite soft there. Might be that it automatically switched to something else there. Also because like we have only 12 megapixels instead of 16 that it should have. So yes, definitely the Nubia Z60 Ultra's tele lens doesn't have any macro capabilities, so it's probably using the main camera sensor and cropping the hell out of it. Where we have macro capabilities here on the Vivo X100 Pro, it is okayish, but I saw better already. Also in terms of macros, especially Xiaomi devices that have sensors and camera lenses that are optimized for this kind of shooting. Then we come to selfies, and this is like the one category where the Vivo X100 Pro crushes the Nubia Z60 Ultra, because the under display one is weak. I thought at least so. When you take a look at the photos, yes, definitely a win for the X100 Pro, wider field of view, also looking a bit nicer. But the Nubia Z60 Ultra is not looking so bad, at least if I don't zoom in. Let's zoom in a little bit. There you can see it's a bit soft on the X100 Pro, it's not sharp, not so sharp. And now zoom in on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. By the way, the Nubia Z60 Ultra only has 8 megapixels here when you turn on the portrait mode, where the we can use the full 32 megapixels on the Vivo X100 Pro, which is quite a bummer on the Z60 Ultra. But yeah, which one would you prefer there? The eye color is wrong on the Nubia for some reason. It's more going towards the greenish, but I have more grayish, bluish eyes. So sharpness is interestingly enough good, I think, on it. And the bokeh and edge detection is also okay. We have a bit of blooming effect definitely from the under display camera there, but it is okay. Yes, the Vivo X100 Pro wins there for sure, but the Nubia is not so far away, I would say, there. In this regard, what do you think? Which one would you prefer to use? And that's it in terms of daylight photos. Video recording with the Vivo X100 Pro in the dark night situation, walking towards the light, 1-inch type sensor. What do you think about the internal mics and about the video quality here? A video recording with the Nubia Z60 Ultra, the ultra wide angle, which is the default video camera here, 18mm. What do you think about this? Walking towards the light right now, and yeah, let's switch to the 35 one. So this is the 35mm one with a slightly larger kind of sensor. What do you think about this one here? Now the light's in the background, so what do you think about the 35mm one? Nighttime pictures. Let's compare the, what is it, 35mm versus 35 cropped on the Vivo X100 Pro. And yeah, let's see. First of all, colors a bit more realistic, maybe on the Nubia. It looks a bit greenish there. Here it's more bluish, so the Vivo X100 Pro probably a bit better. You can see that the true 35mm is now really clearly beating the cropped in 24mm on the Vivo X100 Pro more than you saw in daylight. So yes, the main camera sensor on the Nubia Z60 Ultra at 35mm is definitely beating the Vivo X100 Pro, especially in nighttime where it gets wishy-washy here on the X100 Pro. And here you can see some details on the Z60 Ultra, that's for sure. Also the sides here, and yeah, also here the advertisements, the cars, everything's just clearer on the Nubia Z60 Ultra with its main camera sensor. When you zoom in, this is the 85mm versus 100mm. You can clearly see again color signs changed a bit on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. It's getting a bit darker, where the Vivo X100 Pro, probably with larger aperture, gives us a bit more light. When I zoom in, you can also see, yeah, it's doing an okayish kind of job, but the Vivo X100 Pro is better. Color is more accurate here. It's a little bit out of focus there on this Z60 Ultra, or maybe motion blur, and look at the little logos here, much more readable than on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. And when I zoom in even further, this is 10 times here, and this is 170 times, because 70mm, because you can press the zoom button again, it goes to 170mm as the recommended one. Second option, where 10 times on the X100 Pro is the second option. Yes, do I have to say anything more? Yes, it looks superior on the X100 Pro. Then we can even go 10 times now on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, and yeah, forget about it. This one is quite interesting because it's 23mm on the Vivo X100 Pro and 24mm on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, so cropping in from the ultra wide angle. First glance, if you don't zoom in, looks pretty similar, maybe a bit cooler colors here, better HDR on the Vivo X100 Pro, where it's a bit warmer colors on the Z60 Ultra, and a bit overblown highlights maybe. When you zoom in, let's zoom in on this car, for example, you can see the clarity hidden on the X100 Pro. It's basically the same that we saw with the 35mm cropped in from the X100 Pro versus the native 35 on the Nubia. So you see the difference here, definitely, for sure. But maybe, yeah, slightly better there on the Nubia in comparison to the 24 to 35mm crop on the Vivo X100 Pro. So yeah, detail level is okay, everything is okay there, but yes, it's clearer on the X100 Pro for sure when it comes to this. Ultra wide angle, again, this time ultra wide angle 50mm versus 18mm. Everything was dark, I couldn't see anything there. Those two people here, or three people, I could see, and you can see towards the sides very, very soft on both, but even softer on the X100 Pro. Then the people there on the side, you can distinguish them, and here it's a blob basically. And also towards the middle here, it's a close call, but look at the pavement there, look at the trees. I think the Nubia Z60 Ultra is doing a better job. Then quite interesting here for this advertisement, 85 versus 100mm. I took it several times with the Vivo X100 Pro because it was always overblown. I'm not sure why. I even pressed tap to focus and tap to auto exposure. It was always overblown here for some reason. And yes, I wanted to have the same kind of advertisement, but it was changing all the time. And then this woman popped up. The guy didn't pop up anymore. So but it's the same kind of advertisements. You can see basically the same. They're doing the same there. So yeah, better there on the Z60 Ultra, I think, than on the Vivo X100 Pro. So yes, the X100 Pro can also sometimes fail. And this one is also quite interesting. First glance, yeah, brighter picture on the X100 Pro, also 100 versus 85mm. Which one would you take? Maybe the X100 Pro because it's brighter. But when you take a little detail levels there, you can see very comparable. Yes, the X100 Pro is better in terms of like getting noise out of the way, and here you see some sharpening algorithms and noise, yeah, but it's very comparable. It's very close. X100 Pro is winning there, but the Nubia Z60 Ultra is not so far away. Another shot, 35 versus 35mm with a little bit more light, and as soon as you have a bit more light, the Vivo X100 Pro is doing a better job. Also in terms of colors, I think here the Toyota logo is right on the X100 Pro, where here it's like going to magenta, which is like a bit wrong on the Z60 Ultra. Otherwise, the detail level is there. Look at the car, very, very comparable. So yes, the X100 Pro can, with enough light, also be very, very comparable to the real 35mm that we have on the Z60 Ultra also here. Overall, what do you think about those pictures here? I think the nighttime shows the superiority of the X100 Pro's main camera sensor there. But the Nubia Z60 Ultra is not doing super bad. It's very close to the X100 Pro's main camera sensor, 1-inch type sensor. The ultra wide angle is losing a bit against the main camera sensor of the X100 Pro, but it's expected. But it is a lot better when it comes to competing against the ultra wide angle of the Vivo X100 Pro. And zoom is very comparable, but yes, in the end of the day, the X100 Pro is winning. So let's come to the conclusion. Here my conclusion and ranking list. TLDR, the Nubia Z60 Ultra gets a total of 4.305 points, where the Vivo X100 Pro gets a total of 4.435 points. And yes, in the end of the day, the Vivo X100 Pro is the winner over the Nubia Z60 Ultra. We saw already with the nighttime comparisons, the main camera photo quality is slightly better than the Nubia Z60 Ultra with the main camera photo quality. And it has something to do with the ability of the 24mm super wide angle or wide angle kind of main camera to crop in even to 35mm, and even at night times, daylight, it is like distinguishable that the Nubia is a bit better, but it's not a huge margin where it's better. And at night time, sometimes if you have enough light, you don't even notice the difference there. We have a bit better HDR on the main camera photo quality on the Vivo X100 Pro as well. Ultra wide angle is quite interesting because they had reverse flips. Basically, the ultra wide angle is wider on the Vivo X100 Pro with 15mm, a lot narrower on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, but also a larger sensor. It's doing way better in nighttime, and in daylight it's also a lot sharper, but it doesn't get this dramatic kind of view. This is why it's not getting 4.4 or even more points. It just sits there with other ultra wide angles that have 4.3 points there in terms of detail levels and what they can achieve. So if it would be a bit wider, if it would be both 15mm, then the Nubia Z60 Ultra with its large sensor and this quality would have gotten 4.4, maybe even 4.5 points. Zoom camera photo quality is a bit further apart. The Vivo X100 Pro gets 4.5 points, where the Nubia Z60 Ultra 4.2 points. I couldn't get it a little bit more there, simply because it is at the 10 times and further beyond, and the algorithms and especially the night time losing a little bit against also against the competition there. And otherwise, if they manage to fix the nighttime issues there, I could even bring it to 4.3, maybe even 4.4 points on the Nubia Z60 Ultra, because especially when it comes to video mode, but also like at 7.7 times, which is like the equivalent of the zoom camera photo quality of the Vivo X100 Pro. The only difference between both of them is the slightly better processing of the X100 Pro. And if the Nubia team can also manage to improve the processing there, the phone just released, the Vivo X100 Pro released a little bit earlier. If they can improve the quality there a little bit of the zoom, then it is very, very comparable for sure. And in terms of video, you saw already the potential of the Nubia Z60 Ultra. Talking about video, let's talk about the video recording quality. And here I really am surprised, but I'm giving the Nubia Z60 Ultra the edge over the Vivo X100 Pro. The Vivo X100 Pro 4.3 stars and the Nubia Z60 Ultra 4.4 stars. Why is that the case? Because the Nubia is better with its main 35mm. Yes, sometimes you have to use a selfie stick or stretch your hand further away, or if you have long hands, then long arms, then it's no issue. And the Vivo is worse in these ultra wide angles, really soft towards the sides and a bit over sharpened there. Yes, better HDR, but it's not very pleasant to look at. On the other hand, it flips completely when it comes to selfies, because the Nubia is like completely destroyed, I think, by everything that's out there in terms of smartphones right now, where the Vivo X100 Pro is only 1080p, but it's good 1080p, so it's beating it. But so the major point is now zoom camera, and zoom camera is pretty good on the Vivo X100 Pro, especially also with the nice bokeh and so on, but detail levels and sharpness is a tad better on the Nubia, and also the reach is a tad better on the Nubia, and it looks a little bit better on the Nubia there in general. Also the both are very smooth when it comes to zooming. Yes, I put also in that the Vivo X100 Pro can switch between the lenses during recording in 4K 30 and 4K 60, but this is like beaten by the Nubia Z60 Ultra, even it doesn't have this, by its capability of shooting 4K 120 frames per second on all camera sensors, which is super handy. I like it on my Xperia 1 Mark V as well, and it's super handy, and yeah, this is super handy dandy. This is why a slight win in terms of video on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. I also think the 18mm one for vlogging as a main camera sensor is working much better than the ultra wide angle on the X100 Pro. But this is my personal opinion. Autofocus performance is basically the same, nothing that I saw as a big difference. Front camera, you saw already, it's a big win for the Vivo X100 Pro, 4.1 against 3.1 on the Nubia Z60 Ultra. Camera UI is basically on par, quite impressive. The Nubia Z60 Ultra, I made it like when the Z50S Pro came out from Nubia. I made an overview there of the camera UI. It's very handy, very good, has all the modes that you need, and one-handed usage features basically the same. Extra features also on par there. They have all the stuff that you need. Pro video mode is there, focus speaking is there, lots of stuff is there that you can use. Extra stabilization modes and so on are there as well if you need those. Both, I think, then switching to 1080p 60 frames per second, and the results are pretty much the same. And yeah, this is why we have this score. Let's check out the ranking. Where does it leave those two? The Vivo X100 Pro on the top, of course, together with the Huawei Mate 60 Pro, but definitely better main camera photos and better zoom camera photos. So if you are looking into this, then the Vivo X100 Pro is the winner. When you take a look at video, maybe the Huawei Mate 60 Pro is a bit better, and also the ultra wide angle is a bit better there for sure as well, and extra features that you get that are slightly better there as well. The Nubia Z60 Ultra is, you have to go way down to see where it lands. It lands on the same spot. Is it the same spot? No, it's not the same spot. It's a bit below the Xiaomi 14 Pro that also came out with Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. And this has nothing to do with the main camera sensor, because the main camera sensor 35mm is better. It's better than the Xiaomi 14 Pros for sure. Also the ultra wide angle is better. Also the zoom camera quality is better on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. So why the heck is the Nubia Z60 Ultra so much down there? It's simply because the front camera in my rating system has a little bit of a higher value than one would expect it. With 3.1, it is like really dragging it down. You can also see here 4.4 for the video recording quality. It's on par with the Xiaomi 14 Pro. Autofocus performance on par, but yes, the Xiaomi 14 Pro has way better selfie cam, even beating the Vivo X100 Pro in this regard. And the Nubia is abysmal. It's like 3.1 points. It's like almost the lowest score. It's like a little bit better than the Xperia Pro I that has only, I think, 8 megapixels. And I was surprised by myself, but I tested the Xperia Pro I against the Nubia Z60 Ultra. I was surprised that the Nubia Z60 Ultra with its under display camera can beat the Xperia Pro I, especially in lower light situations, which is like ridiculously bad on the Xperia Pro I. And also camera UI is a bit better than on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. So you see the only difference, and this is why it gets 4.3 or 5 points, is just the selfie that is dragging it really down there in my total ranking. So the Xiaomi 14 Pro is a more complete package, but if you don't take selfies at all, then just take a look at those values here and video recording values maybe for the back, and then you will see it will beat the Google Pixel, it will beat the Xiaomi 14 Pro, the Galaxy S23 Ultra almost, despite the only thing that's not beating it is the zoom. The Honor Magic is very comparable, but it's also beating it in ultra wide angle, and the rest is like very comparable. Also, I think it beats it in video recording quality, which is quite interesting there. And yeah, it's coming to the Xperia 1 Mark V, Huawei Mate 50 Pro kind of level there. In these terms, might even beat them in a few things. You can see comparable in terms of ultra wide angle to the Mate 50 Pro, beating the Xperia 1 Mark V, and also in terms of zoom, beating it for sure, beating it even in terms of videos, which is quite interesting. So yeah, it's quite interesting to see that. And maybe someday I have to like change the front camera evaluation there. You can write in the comment section what you think about my front cam evaluation, if I should change the factor there. That will rearrange everything here. Right now, I have to check what is the front camera. It's 10%, set to 10% weight. Maybe it should be 5% like camera UI or extra features, but I think 10% was like a good value there. I can also, let's go to unequal values like 8% or something like this if you want to. So write in the comments what you think, which one is more important. Autofocus performance at 10%, front cam is at 10%, should it be a bit lower, should be the camera UI a bit higher. Evaluate it. This will change the ranking completely, but for now I leave it as it is, because I think the front camera performance is still important for some people that are taking selfies. This is why I have it here at 10%, and this will leave us to 4.3 or 5. If it would be my personal opinion, then the Nubia Z60 Ultra would sit directly here in the level of Huawei P60 Pro, Apple iPhone 15 Pro, Xiaomi 14, Xiaomi 13 Ultra, and P50 Pro, somewhere here, maybe above the Xperia, maybe above the P50 Pro. In this level there, it's definitely lower than the X100 Pro and Find X6 Pro and the Mate 60 Pro there for sure. But in this level, I would definitely give it a huge win. As you can see here, also in comparison to the Z50S Pro, there will be a comparison coming definitely for sure. You can see that they improved a lot, especially with the ultra wide angle and the zoom, and also video recording quality a little bit, and where they downgraded a little bit is the front-facing video, but the rest is like almost on par there. So this is my conclusion and ranking: Vivo X100 Pro versus the Nubia Z60 Ultra. What is your opinion? Write it down in the comment section. That's everything for this video. Hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching. Until the next time. Bye.